Hello, and welcome to another Conversations in Time podcast, the award-winning counterfactual history podcast that tops the What If charts. Enough of me, though. It's over to the guys.
Hello, and welcome to another Conversations in Time podcast. I'm John N.
And I'm Ian G.
So let's get back to where we left off. Cricket in the USA, Part 2.
You know, it's not like football or soccer where everybody's watching the game and the emotions going up and down with where the ball is and all this type of stuff. And you just don't get that in cricket. And I've never heard it in baseball.
No. Yeah, I was going to say, listen, if you've got a good team, and I'm from Philadelphia, so you go to a Phillies, our baseball team, right? You go to a Phillies game, and you're going to find like 40,000, 50,000 fans that are going to be screaming, and it depends upon the time of the season and who they're playing and that kind of stuff. But I know what you're saying about people like seeming to be disinterested at a baseball game, but
I'm not saying everybody, but it's
it depends on the city. I'm not going to lie to you about that. Like, it really kind of depends on what team it is and how well they're doing that season, how much the game means. And in Philadelphia, knock on wood, we've been lucky lately to have a string of really good, teams. And when you're down there, it can be loud, and you're definitely people are definitely watching every pitch and moaning and groaning or excited when something good happens. So, I'm able to watch, some of the T20 matches, the county, as well as the 100. I caught some of them last summer. I was, and I see what you're talking about too, but I also see in some of those crowds and some of those matches, the crowd really being into it as well. And you can tell by the crowd reaction. Like,
absolutely.
Right?
That's right. So I've been going to the T20 locally. So the local team, which isn't the cricket team I actually support, but the Warwickshire Bears play T20, and the big game is the local derby. It's called the Bears versus the Pears, which is Worcestershire, which happens to be the team that I nominally follow. And there's a much larger crowd, and the atmosphere is much better. There's no doubt about that. I mean, I've been at some of the games, and you're thinking, well, why is anybody here? They're nobody's cheering, or they might clap on as a 4 or a 6, and then that's about it. Yeah, but you're right. It does depend on who you're watching, and strangely enough, they're looking at. We talk about the declining audiences, and that's happening in T20. The 100 is the new thing, and they're trying to get the T20 to be a bit more like the IPL. Now the IPL, you get 90,000 seater stadium. There's no doubt India has turned T20 into a super game. There's no doubt about that. They're trying to have more local derbies to try and get that atmosphere back up. It's impacting the county game as well, because people just aren't that interested in 5 days. Mainly because there's other forms of cricket. You've got this short form of cricket. You're either going to watch one or the other. Not everybody's going to watch every single type of cricket match. A one-day county game, T20, and potentially 100. Although obviously the 100 is very Americanized because it's a franchise. It's not part of the county like the T20 is.
Right.
But it is growing in popularity, and there's a lot more razzmatazz. There's DJs and fireworks, flames, all that sort of stuff going off between overs and all that sort of malarkey. Although there's a 20, but it's different. Yeah, that's right.
Pitches and designated hitters, and there's a bowler that doesn't need to bat at all, and you've got an extra batter on the. Yeah, this is that's the cross connection between the two sports. Whether they want to admit it or understand it or whatever. It's going on. Maybe they're not aware of what's going on in either sport. I'm not sure, but they're going down twin tracks here of.
Yeah. So I have one question. I have one question for you then, Joe. Right. So we've got the what if America has cricket. So let's say it's a shortened form of the game. Okay. And you look at the changes. So would cricketers have a big glove, or would baseball not have a glove? Because, there's a similarity in, when somebody hits the ball and it goes up fairly high, so cricketers don't, the fielders don't have gloves.
Right.
Baseball fielders do. You know, and I'm assuming it's not to protect their hands. It's more so that they catch the ball and don't.
So that they catch the ball.
You know,
I think that's a structural issue with the sport because 3 outs an inning, 3 up, 3 down. And in order to, again, that speeds the game along, doesn't it? If you've got a glove on, you're able to catch the ball that much better. But right, for a baseball batter, he's going to have maybe 3 or 4 times at bat in any one game. Whereas in cricket, you got the one shot and you're done. Like, you know what I mean? So I think because of the nature of the multiple innings that go on in baseball, that's why the glove is there. I think the glove would have remained. I do, and I think it's just because that's the nature of that sport, that, just to keep the outs going faster, that the glove would stay. And I think cricket would stay the way that it is, which is without.
All right. It's one of those interesting things,
So I guess I'm just conscious of time. I guess my last question, Joe, is obviously we've seen an insurgency. No, we haven't. We've seen a resurgency of cricket to a certain extent in parts of the USA based on sort of recent immigration of people from the Indian subcontinent. Do you think it will continue to grow? Do you think it can come back from where it was in the 1850s? Can it compete against baseball?
So with the World Cup coming here, last year, and it was kind of up and down, and I get it. And, the American team did okay, but I don't think it made much of a ripple in the American sporting press.
Okay.
That the American squad had done as well as it did, by surprise, right? So, and at the time, my feeling was like, hey, the ICC is really hoping that cricket never really died in the United States, and it's just time it fell asleep, and it's time to wake it up again, right? That's what I think they're really hoping for. In as much as I am a cricket fan, and I'm telling you, I really am, that I think it's going to be like an uphill struggle to sell the sport outside of either recent immigrant or formerly immigrant populations, South Asian, West Indian, et cetera, English, Australian, that are here in the United States. I think it's a tougher sell. I think if it's, you have people now with Major League Cricket, which is, televised, and it's 6 franchises, right? They not all the franchises have their own ground. So they keep moving the ground throughout the season. Started in Oakland, San Francisco, moved to Texas, and then to Florida is where it's going to wrap up. And then all the franchise teams go to those locations and they play matches, right? So my feeling is still that cricket is Major League Cricket. You have guys that are willing to bankroll that, like literally ready to bankroll this, at least for a few years. They know they're not going to make a return really on their investment up front, but they're willing to spend the money because they believe long term you're going to be able to hit those millions and millions of first, recent immigrants from South Asia or people of South Asian descent. And then hopefully from there, it gets more exposure to the average American. And I think that is really the trick. Is how do you expose it to the average American and they would like to watch it? So my mind too, cricket, because it's such a high scoring game, especially T20, right? There's always something go. There's always runs coming. There's always something to watch. The ball's always flying in some direction. So in that respect, like, I think if you're like a baseball fan, I think if you just give it a chance, understand the rules a little bit, I think you can follow. I think you understand, like, this is a higher scoring bat and ball sport than baseball is, right? And that might be the real one way they're going to have to try and really market it that way. It's nice to get the youth involved and trying to start youth programs, and they're doing that as well concurrently in the U.S. There are far more youth leagues and teams and developmental stuff going on than there was 10 years ago. But is it enough? I don't know. Cricket's not played in the schools, and that's a big handicap right there.
I mean, that's probably the biggest to have to overcome. So.
At the school that I teach at, the high school that I teach at, our gym teacher is from Jamaica, so he grew up playing cricket. So I was able to get anybody. I went to him. I said, "Hey, what if I could get equipment?" And he was like, "Oh my gosh, I would love to." So we got stuff, and every year for at least a week and a half of his, there's a module where they teach and play cricket, and he explains the rules and he tests them on it as well as they have to play it. So, but how many schools are doing that in the United States, right?
No, that's right.
And And maybe that's partly because he's of Jamaican descent and that kind of stuff. But, for us, it works out, and we have kids that are like suddenly become interested. They don't know anything about the sport. And, when they first start playing, then they realize, well, there might be something here. This is not bad. You can really whack the ball when you want.
Well, it's good fun. I mean, when you yourself from the arcane scoring mechanisms and all the rest of it, and the LBW rules, etc., it's good fun. And I guess at a school level, you're trying to avoid all that. It is. I remember a very rainy day at a PE lesson where we were taught how to score a cricket match, and I can't remember anything about it. That it was worse than physics. It was just incredible. I get that somebody's got to score it, but no kid's going to be interested in it. In fact, very few fans are, frankly. But it's good fun. That's the bottom line when you're playing.
It's one of the things I was going to say, and Joe, just cut us short if you need to go somewhere, because we're enjoying this, so we're obviously keeping talking, and we've run over our time window. But yeah, I mean, I went to the US. I've got some family in the US, and I was in New York when the World Cup was on, and probably the best game of the World Cup involved the USA with against Pakistan when they had 2 super overs. I mean, I was on the edge of my seat. I mean, that was an unbelievable game, which is a shame because it involved the USA, and they won, and they won in such dramatic style. It was incredible.
I was lucky. I was at the C.C. Morris Library that day, and I was with 2 reporters from the BBC that day, and they were able to bring it up on their feed. So we were able to watch those last couple of overs in the Super Over together and that kind of stuff. And they too, that was an exciting finish.
It doesn't get any better than that.
Now, I 100% agree with you on that. Now, once the United States advanced into the next round, okay, then you see like the gulf that exists between the United States and the bigger full member nations. Like truly, like we didn't really have a shot in any of that once you got to the second round. But it was good for us to get, and we qualified now for the next World Cup next summer and that kind of stuff. So can they keep barraging the American media on this sport and do their best to try and get it out away from just the South Asian, West Indian expat communities? And I think
one of the reasons is that they do need some infrastructure. I mean, it is a shame that in New York, the MINY hasn't got a ground. They keep trying. Probably would have a big base, because there's obviously a lot of South Asian immigrant people there and families and whatever. I mean, obviously when India played Pakistan, that's why they put it in New York, because it was that was a 34,000 seater stadium that sold out,
right?
And there were probably plenty of people who would have paid more, or paid to go and see it as well if the stadium would have been any bigger. So I mean, I think that if they can get the infrastructure in the right places, and you've got the basis, you've got a foundation to potentially build on, which is almost what you need. And then you need 1 or 2 key people to do something, either play well internationally, become some sort of celebrity in whatever way that could happen.
Yeah.
And it triggers something.
Absolutely. And even the Major League Cricket now, I mean, every team has like 5 or so foreign born players allowed, onto the squad. And so they are, Australians, West Indians, South Africans that are playing professional cricket here, and like big name, Stephen Smith until he got injured. Like, he played last season here last summer. He played. Warner's playing, this season. And so, like big names they've gotten to come over to play Major League Cricket here in the United States. It's not just American-born players that are playing here. That ultimately is what you want to help them develop, obviously. And you bring the foreign players in, and they have a whole different skill set level, mindset as well, that those American players have to learn from. So,
but then there could be a scenario where you get somebody who's an American player and is just very good. Let's face it, they play a lot of baseball. It's all hand-to-eye coordination.
Correct.
And then they could go to India or the UK or Australia, make a big name for themselves, and then it starts building up from there. Who knows? It's and And it wouldn't take long. I mean, there's a lot of people in the US, the way that sport in schools, colleges works, promotes finding the talent. It's a bit different certainly in the UK. You have to join a club and then see if you get spotted, see if you've got to have an interest in it rather than it being a school thing where everybody's playing it. I mean, they do play cricket, but what I mean is that it's just one of the sports you play. It's,
about like, I was going to say like 5 years ago, maybe, give or take, there was a guy that was, trying to recruit college baseball players who probably were not going to play Major League Baseball, but were still pretty skilled, as baseball players, and then convert them into cricketers. And I don't know where that went. Obviously, I don't think it's gone anywhere, but I mean, I agree with you. Like, that would be something that maybe they should seriously consider, getting guys that are good at baseball, but maybe not top level, but still have those skills. Again, hand-eye coordination, athleticism, right? All that. And try to convert them and teach them cricket with that help, and that way you'll have more American-born players. Would that help to popularize the sport? Yeah, that's probably what their ultimate dream is to find that Babe Ruth in a way,
No, that's right. Yeah,
to use that name, and that's, by the way, that's the other thing we didn't have time to discuss was the number of famous cricketers that have come to the United States and have played, like including Grace, played here, came on tour, played across the United States. Don Bradman as well came through in the 30s, right before Bodyline. Douglas Jardine, the other the Englishman, he also played in the United States right after the First War in the early 20s. But any number of very famous cricketers have come through the U.S. And a lot of those were done to try and either gauge the level of cricket enthusiasm in the U.S. or try to give it another birth, try a renaissance type of thing and see whether that would work. And so far it has been an uphill struggle. Baseball is entrenched. It I don't think baseball is going to be going anywhere. You're going to have to certainly live. You're never going to replace it, right? The methodology of baseball is just too much.
They did say that about soccer, though. I mean, soccer's a similar type thing where it wasn't an American staple, and people said it would never take off, and they've taken several attempts. I mean, it still isn't a huge sport, but it is growing. It's just something that needs time and effort, ultimately.
Right. And it is a huge sport on the youth level. It is gigantic to the point where on the youth level for kids, like American football is definitely hurting. Like there's not nearly as many American football teams as there used to be even 20 years ago, but there are soccer teams everywhere. The problem is that as those kids grow older, they, kind of retreat away from soccer and either start playing American football or, concentrate on basketball, concentrate on baseball, that kind of a thing, so, and then soccer loses its edge in a sense to the older, more established sports that are out there. So, my one son, plays soccer, basketball, and baseball. I just had a baseball game last night for him. And, he's pretty good at all three of them. And he's a pretty good soccer player. And I can tell, as he's gotten older, he's kind of concentrated a little bit more on baseball than he has on soccer. I keep trying to redirect him back to football, to soccer football.
Why not cricket then? How come now? Haven't you got a set in your back garden?
Well, we have the goal back there. Yes. And so, and my other son too, as well, now also plays soccer as well. But, and again, on the youth level, it's readily available. You don't have to go far to find a local youth soccer league that you could put your kid into. And that.
But you're not trying to get him to play cricket there?
There's not a lot nearby.
Right.
Yeah. For cricket, or that it comes only in the summertime and only for a week, like some sort of camp kind of a deal. And then that's it. But there's very little organized where you're going to have teams playing each other on a regular basis. No, that's going to be more like a tournament thing that comes up as well as camps. So we're not quite there yet where it's more and more readily available, but we'll have to wait and see what happens.
So you're saying that in Philly, that's still got some cricket clubs, but they don't have like youth. I'm just wondering whether they have a sort of youth structure for letting kids come in. Oh, they don't.
Whatever youth structure would exist in Philadelphia is going to exist among the, South Asian type community, right?
Yeah.
They're the ones that, but you have indoor cricket facilities now that weren't there 10 years ago. They're there now. Like they're in the Philadelphia area and that kind of stuff. But that seems like that is, based on the community. And I'm not sure how many, non-South Asian or former colonial, whatever, people are involved in youth cricket. And my feeling would be the answer is not many, and that it's still very much based on the South Asian community or West Indian community, et cetera, or the sons and daughters of expat that are here.
Yeah.
So that's still pretty much the way that it is. And again, that's the nut that has to be, like, in essence, cracked in order to see it, Bro, and when we were talking, when we first like broached this subject about what if, I wondered if relations between the United States and Britain would have been different if cricket had remained popular in the United States. What would that have done to British-American relation? Instead of like the Ashes being Australian, would the Ashes have been American? Right across the Atlantic would have been much shorter distance to come, right? And how would that have played out in the events of the 20th century? If America had become a test playing nation, and throughout the in the early 20th century or the late 1800s, whatever, American teams routinely toured, whether it be to Australia or to England, would that have made relations, that much tighter? I don't know the answer to that, to be honest with you, because I feel as if sometimes between the United States, Australia, and the UK, like, that's about as tight as you're going to get with, like, that's about as close as you're going to have in relations between nations, in a way. I don't know what could have been done to make it closer. Like, would the United States have jumped into the First World War sooner if Britain was in peril? Would the United States have jumped into World War II a lot sooner if those strong cricket, relations were there? And I don't know.
It's an interesting conundrum,
right?
Because ultimately, when you look at sport in the US, it's all very insular, isn't it? It's not,
yes.
They're all sports that are played in the US. Nobody else plays them. You had one sport that unite, or you at least had some common rivalry, in terms of a competition. Let's say it brings you together. You have a better appreciation of the people in those countries, or at least you're aware of them and the issues and things like that. No, I think it would have had a more positive impact. Like I say, would they have been any closer? Probably not. But I think that there would have been a more awareness, of those particular.
Well, I think the problem with that what if scenario is as you said, Joe, the relationship's pretty close anyway. I mean, it's not how as it was perhaps, but I suppose the flip that question on its side and I'm being semi-facetious, it would be more a question of what would the relationship with Nazi Germany be like if they played cricket? But because America was not strategically, America and Britain have been adversaries until the Second World War in an economic sense, and there's always sort of the anti-imperial views in America and all the rest of it. But there was never any serious likelihood of anything other than a business-like relationship, I suspect, unless something had happened. But it's interesting. I mean, I think if you look at, all right, but Australia was part of the British Empire and the British Dominion for a lot longer than America was, or more recently, shall we say. But Australia was seen as by many people in Britain is an extension of Britain culturally to a certain extent, and many thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, of British people living in Australia now, or certain relations of. It's difficult. America was always independent, so it's difficult to see how that would have a similar relationship. The same is true of New Zealand. Less the case with South Africa, for various reasons. It's an interesting thought, isn't it? It is an interesting thought because the tour, particularly when Australia comes to touring an Ashes tour in England, I wouldn't say there's a buzz in the streets. That would be ridiculous. But in the media, in the sporting media, there's a buzz when Australia comes to England in the summer. And I think that would be 100% be the case if America had a top class test match team. 100%. When America came here, it would be a huge buzz, and that's an interesting thought.
What would it have done for international relations? And if I'm gonna throw another curveball at you right away too. So what about in the post World War II world, like during the Cold War? What if the United States was a cricketing nation? What about non-aligned, what used to be called the third world, the non-aligned nation like India?
Yeah.
Would if America had routinely played India in cricket, would that have led to closer ties between the US and India?
Yeah.
And likewise, part of, would India have firmly fallen into the non-communist, block of nations, rather than kind of play a double game between the two sides, East and West, in the Cold War? Part of that, I think, is partly because I don't think that India wanted to hear British voices telling them,
no, 100%.
You need to be on our side with this. But if America was there, and you just mentioned it a second ago, like, oh, Americans with their anti-imperialist views, what if that rang true? Like, what if America could speak to India, and and India was more willing to listen to a cricket playing America rather than Britain? Would India have firmly gone into the grasp of the westernized, in quotes, alliance against communism? I wonder about that.
No, there's that again.
That feels like there's some that would gain some traction.
Yeah, 100%. And it's interesting. You always got to remember when you say India or US, you're talking about particularly in the case of India, the ruling elite, and the ruling elite. 100% do play cricket in India. Lots of people play it in India as well, but the people who have influence, almost without exception, will have played cricket at one point in their lives. So having a touring first-class cricket team like America, I think that 100% they would be, they'd be cheek by jowl with the ruling class and the ruling party and all the rest of it. And that would make a big difference. I think that's an interesting point.
Yeah. And if if India went a certain way, would other at that time developing?
Oh, you're right. The figurehead. Yeah.
Yeah. Would it have been a lot tougher for the communist world to sell? Or
right.
Yeah. And I wondered about that.
Let's stop for a word from our sponsors.
Are you fed up of lifting the hood on your sweatshirt? We knew it. It's so 90s. Do you want to lead and not be led? What if, with a few pumps of your hand, it's done for you? Well, those obstinate seamstresses at Aknowlegeable have you covered, literally. Introducing the hoodie hand pump. Fit the rubberized bladder into the hood, feed the pipe and inflator ball down the back and into your pocket. When you're ready, pump the bulb. 5 or 6 firm squeezes should do. And there you are, a firm taut hood keeping you covered. Bingo bango, the sidewalk is now your catwalk. Everyone you meet will smile and say, you look like a right proper Johnny. Stand with your hand pumped friends. You'll really look like a pack of them. Oh, techno, you've only gone and blummin' done it again.
Today's episode is sponsored by Techno, helping yesterday, today. Techno is a subsidiary of Uncle Schnookums Enterprises, wholly owned and operated by Deforest Co. Global, pioneers in transforming the world's rainforests into your favorite products. All rights reserved. No claims or returns will be honored.
And we're back.
Likewise, another what if too. Cricket in England definitely crossed the racial color barrier long before the United States, before baseball did, in America. And I also wonder if cricket had remained popular, who would have been the Jackie Robinson? I'm not sure if you know who that is, right?
The name is familiar.
Yeah. Okay, so he's the first African American player to play Major League, baseball.
Yeah,
and break that color, and that was only done after World War II. But to break that color, barrier in U.S. sport, and especially in baseball. But that in England, if I'm not mistaken, it was the early 1900s that there was a West Indian that played county cricket, and he broke that. So what, who would that have been? When would that have occurred? Where would it have occurred? I think cricket would have definitely, in my mind, because of West Indians living in New York, who had a very highly organized cricket league. And in essence, still do, but they certainly did in the dark ages of the 20th century of American cricket, that the West Indians up there in New York City continued to play because for them, it was their culture. It was a way right for home. I wonder if, and some of them are very good cricket players, would crossing the race barrier have happened much, much sooner if Americans had played cricket? I wonder if that too would have occurred much sooner, And again, in the North, it would have been up in the northern states, but you would think that maybe a West Indian or two would cross over and start playing for, a cricket club up in New York City and that kind of stuff. At least that, that's a what if that I was mulling over in my head, as well as the India, Pakistan type.
Yeah. No, that's those right there. Huh?
Yeah. Would it have had any, bearing on, again, I think a lot of India's reaction and actions during the Cold War was in direct response to their colonial heritage, right? And to Britain, and like not wanting to hear that again. I know, but other than they're not wanting to hear the British voice again, telling them what was right and what was wrong.
Well, that's the case even today. I mean, India is a lukewarm. Well, it's not even lukewarm. It's not.
Commonwealth member. Yeah.
It's not. Well, I'm talking about the impact of the invasion of Ukraine. But no stretch of imagination is India supporting Russia, but it's not particularly supporting Ukraine either. And that's because, as you say, it's post-war history of being non-aligned to the West, being happy to speak to the Russians. It's got lots of, kit military-wise it's bought from the Russians over the years. You're right. If there'd been a charm offensive, and it wouldn't even have been as blatant as that through the 50s and 60s, if America was a first-class cricketing test cricket team, I suspect that would have been very different. Although you've always got to remember, because you mentioned bodyline there, you always remember the opportunity for sport to chuck a spanner in the works of diplomacy as well.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely, 100%, absolutely. I'm a big fan of reading about bodyline and and
have a look on YouTube. There was a British television drama about 20 years ago. I couldn't for the life of me tell you what it was called, but it's almost certainly got bodyline in the title. If you have a look on YouTube, it's almost certainly available, and it was well received at the time.
Actually, it was done in the 1980s, and it was done It was done in Australia, and it is titled Bodyline.
Right. Okay.
Right. So Hugo Weaver, that Australian actor, he played Jardine. Right. Hugo Weaver's been around for a while as an actor, but yes, I have seen that. At the time, I made my wife, we had to sit and watch that. Once I could get that on DVD in the United States, and I could play it on a computer, not on our television DVDs, because there's a different format and all that stuff. Then I sat down and made her watch it, and at the end of it, she's like, I can't believe that, I can't believe that Australia lost. Like, they really, that's real life. That's what happened, that kind of thing. So,
again, if I'm correct, in my memory, it comes back to that gentleman and players thing, because Jardine was deemed to be not a gentleman by both his background, I think, and the way he was bowling. Was that the case?
Yeah, well, I mean, he was actually a gentleman because born in India, and then was educated up in Scotland.
Right.
And that's where he kind of learned his cricket, believe it or not. But no, he was considered to be like a gentleman, but he went at it like.
But the MCC weren't keen on the MCC weren't keen on him either, though, were they? They
as it turns out, they had their misgivings, right? Some of them, some of the MCC had misgivings about making him captain, knowing what his temperament was and his personality was, and then of course he does bring the Ashes home, but I guess the idea was the price was too high to be paid, as it caused the rift between Australia and relations between England and Australia, and that kind of a thing. So and then after that, Jardine is more or less kind of, kick to the curb, if I can play that.
Sidelined. Yeah.
Yeah, as time goes by. But, and yeah, I think, listen, 2025. So we're only like 7-8 years away, right? Or no, less. Yeah, 7-8 years away from the 100th anniversary of Bodyline. So I think that, if I can knock on wood, hang out till then, I'm looking forward to seeing what they do for the 100th anniversary of that. Does it drag up old? They always say every time England plays Australia that Bodyline's going to come up. Like it's going to.
Oh, yeah.
It's always
It does, yeah.
there. So I find that.
Well, again, it's interesting from an Australian point of view. It's another one of their milestones of being a mature, independent country. John and I were talking about the Gallipoli campaign yesterday.
I was going to say along with Gallipoli, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
It's one of those things that they weren't part of the empire; they were part of the Dominion, which I won't get into that. But essentially, we're an independent country. But it being an independent culturally, in a mature sense. You've got Gallipoli, you've got Bodyline, you've got the Second World War to a certain extent moving away from Britain because we couldn't help them to any degree and moving towards America. So there's these various milestones, and it's interesting how cricket is one of the major milestones of your cultural heritage in Australia.
And how the immigration test in Australia, I don't know if it's still there. They used to have questions about Don Bradman.
Right.
That was one. Oh yeah. But
my sister became an Australian sister about 7 or 8 years ago. I'll have to ask her next time.
And I don't know whether they removed that or not. And this, to be honest with you, I became like a fan of the English Premier League in the 90s when you could see some of those matches on American cable TV. And that was really the first time that I began to like soccer and understand what was going on watching a soccer football match. And that kind of drove me to learn more about football. And the high school I was teaching at then, one of our science teachers was an Englishman. And I remember talking to him and he's like, oh, you know what you should do? Go buy a shortwave radio. So this is pre-internet. Go buy a shortwave radio, tune into the BBC, especially on a Saturday, and you'll get all the scores as well as some match
commentary. Yeah.
So I did that, right? Next thing you know, I'm tuning in to get the BBC, World Service, sport update. And they're talking about, the soccer matches, the football scores. Next thing they're talking about cricket matches and Yorkshire is 235 for 4. Like, what the hell? What does this mean? All right. What does this mean? So next thing you know, when I access to the internet one day, just before I was married, and I had time on my hands, I actually typed in cricket, and the first site that popped up was something about Don Bradman. And I started reading a biography of him and began to understand that this guy, he was so much better than any other, almost to the point of being better than any other athlete in a team sport, in any sport you want to name, whether it be basketball or baseball or whatever, that he was just so far and above. So I became fascinated with Don Bradman, the character, his life story and that kind of a thing. And he was still alive at the time. I remember the day that he died and that kind of stuff. But that led me to want to understand more. The more I read about Don Bradman, the more I wanted to understand how does this whole cricket thing work. And this was a whole new universe, in essence, that opened up to me. That I had no idea who this guy was. I'd never heard of him, and that kind of a thing. So it took 5 kids, but my youngest son is named Bradman. It was I kept fighting along the line until finally she gave in. And so
you wore it down.
I did. I wore her down. Yeah. It's an interesting thing. What if this whole conversation would be way different if cricket had remained popular? And I do think that legitimately, world sport would be probably different, and that the T20 would have arrived a lot sooner. Right. I do think that the color barrier, the color line in the United States would have been broken in cricket before it was broken in baseball. That would have been and I think relations with South Asia might have been.
Well, it's that soft power, as they call it, isn't it? That generally speaking, America doesn't really deploy soft power. It deploys financial power and obviously military occasionally, but aid, through finance and various but soft power generally not. Whereas it's sports, because as John's mentioned, most American sports. I mean, baseball is played in Japan, I believe, isn't it? But
Yeah. In parts of Latin America and stuff like that.
Yeah. But generally speaking, it doesn't deploy soft power. And when it does, it's Coca-Cola, if you know what I mean. It's not that, but it's not hitting that cultural elite that are in charge of the countries, as you know, as India illustrates. So,
are they playing a couple baseball matches in London? A couple baseball games this season?
They are, yeah.
Okay. So I remember. So somebody was telling me to be quite honest with you, the reason why like they're playing baseball in England every season now, having a couple games there, you would think that this is aimed at, you know, a British audience, but no, it is really aimed at South Asians living in Great Britain. That's the nut that they want to crack. That baseball really wants to try and get into India because they believe that since cricket's well established and a bat and ball sport, that maybe this is a place where baseball can grow. It's funny that both sports need to grow. Like they need, in order to keep generating enough revenue. That's really where we're at in it with postmodern sport.
Yeah.
I mean, even like Australian rules football is the same way, that they too are constantly trying to figure out ways to grow their sport outside of Australia because, you know, they're looking for TV streams and revenue and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And that's all.
It's interesting you mentioned your West Indian colleague of old, but I'm pretty certain that cricket is struggling a little bit in the West Indies now because of skip-ball.
And that's exactly what he said. Exactly what he said. And it's not.
Well, they do have good players, but my friend who lives in India, because we were talking, who's a big cricket nut. He was saying that if you look at the best West Indian players, they don't play Test cricket because they're too focused on the IPL. You know, it's all there's the money. That's right. Yeah, the money there will play there.
Yeah,
they don't get any money for playing Test cricket.
I think there's a book that's going to come out, you know, maybe relatively soon that's going to deal with the proliferation of franchise T20 as well as T10 leagues around the world, and how the modern day cricket player is a lot like the professional golfer on the PGA Tour. That they constantly just go around the world from one league to another, to another, to another, and that they have a limited window to make money, and they're going to do it. You know, and that they're only as good as as the last team and league that they played in. So it's in their benefit to keep their skills high across the board. But in essence, they're just moving around the world. Once the IPL stops, right, then the English League begins, right, the county T20, and then the MLC in the United States. And then once we get then Australia will start up. So like it, but not even that, it's the tournaments that occur in places like Oman. Do you know what I mean?
That's right.
Yeah. In like non-traditional, what we would think is non-traditional test playing cricket country now have these tournaments, even if they're T10, and it's the same, you see the same guys, the same name.
No, right. It's like Afghanistan's got a good team, but they're all India. Oh, you know, their heritage is India. You know, the same in Oman. You know, it's just there's a lot of Indians who live there. Big demand.
Yeah, the Canadians have a CPL. They've got a Canadian Premier League. That'll start once the American MLC is over. That'll start, and you'll see some guys transferring up to Canada to play some matches. I mean,
but again, this got a large subcontinent. I mean, particularly Sikhs. They've got a large Punjabi population. Haven't they?
Yep.
And it's interesting. It's almost as if India's. You know, John's right. There's a lot of I can't what the terminology is. Guest workers isn't quite right. That was somewhere else. But they have a lot of Indian and Pakistani workers in the Gulf, don't they, in Oman? So there's a resource there to tap into. But India doesn't seem to be the common thread of a lot of this, isn't there? I suppose if once the biggest populous country in the world is keen on something, why wouldn't we tap into it?
That's right. Yeah.
You know,
and now hence the reason why, you know, baseball's going to like if baseball just becomes a niche sport in a country with over 1 billion people.
Exactly.
Now take a look at what that means.
Yeah.
Right. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, so you can understand why that's, you know, someplace that they might be looking to grow into, and as much as cricket might be trying to grow into the American market.
Yeah.
That's one side. it's truly the globalization
Yeah.
and the internet, because now I can watch a match if I wanted to. If I can pay for it, I can watch a match anywhere I want, anytime. That kind of stuff. That wasn't even available 20 years ago. That was not even available, but it is now.
That's right.
Right. But now think about it. Really, hey, all this process started a long, long time ago, like in 1859, when those 11 came across the Atlantic, tested the waters, a chance to make some money, and it was, they were guaranteed. I think they were guaranteed upfront 50 pounds a piece for coming, which was big money in 1859, right? 50 pounds a piece, and then whatever a percentage of the gate receipt after that. So if you think about it, there's a long history of this.
Well, it's a bit like it's that cliche, isn't it? Where somebody's asked about an overnight success, and it might be an overnight success to you, but I've been working on this for 20 years.
Yeah, overnight success took 25 years.
Yeah, if in 50 years' time America's got into cricket, we say, "Go, where did this come from?" Well, it came from 1859. I mean, that's the answer, isn't it? It's just it's a 2 steps forward, 1 step back sort of scenario, isn't it? It's fascinating.
Absolutely. But it is the world in which we now live, in a sense, right? But it's really just speeding things up.
Yeah,
is really what's happened. And likewise, right? So we got to make sure baseball and cricket don't become casualties of that speeding up, right?
Well, that's why it's a shame if the West Indies drop cricket and I'm not here to diss basketball, but if they were to lose cricket, that would be a crying shame. They're cricketing.
I think they're a long way off that.
Well, I know, but I agree. But they're not the team they used to be of the 1970s, or are they? Whether that's just a coincidence or whatever. But
not even the team they were in the 1990s.
Well, indeed.
Yeah.
Indeed.
I mean, yeah. It's like that. So you wonder where else is cricket under threat, and what is anybody doing right now to, stave that off and to fight that? So yeah, good questions to ask and things to look at. So 100% agree that you don't want remaining cricket nations can't afford to lose their cricket heritage. At the same time, so hold on what you got and then try to grow it elsewhere is the ICC has to be their model, right?
Yeah,
that's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So on that bombshell, we shall thank Joe for an amazing podcast. That's brilliant. I mean, the time's just flown by, and we've probably got one that's twice as long as our normal one.
Oh, we've got 2 episodes here. It's not uncommon to split.
Well, there's potentially 2 episodes. Yeah.
Impression, Joe, that we could talk forever, and that's always a good sign in a guest. You've been very easy to chat to and very knowledgeable, and been able to project some of our odd questions in directions that we wouldn't necessarily have thought they would go. So that's been really good.
No, I mean, thank you so much for allowing me the opportunity to talk about this, and to speak to the two of you, and to kind of spread the message, of American cricket, or the C.C. Morris Cricket Library. And, we're still very much around. We're on the internet, so people can find us. I would be remiss if I didn't make a short little plug like that.
Yeah, go on. You got any websites or?
Yeah, so if you Google CC Morris, it'll come right up. And we're in the process of switching over to a much more user-friendly type of website and that kind of thing. So whatever you find now, within a year or two, it's probably going to be more beefed up as time goes by. So, but yeah, we're there, and we're trying to put a lot of our documents and photographs. A lot of our photographs are already online that people can look at. Other things that we hold, journals, etc., trying to get them digitized, get them up. Trying to become part. We're trying to get into the 21st century ourselves.
Yeah, I mean that can be a long, expensive process, can't it?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But it is a museum you can visit as well, isn't it? It's not just something that's online.
Yeah, right.
I mean, there is a physical museum as well.
Yeah, physically you can schedule a visit with us if you want to come in and see some of the artifacts that we have. Like we have a signed Don Bradman bat that he donated, back in the 70s to us and stuff. Yeah, so we've got things. We've got letters written by W.G. Grace, and that's what I'm saying. Like sometimes people come through, and people come to the United States or American teams, whatever seas, and they got to know some of the players, and they kept in communication with one another, and we have some of that stuff. You can also
Well, I'll definitely put it on my list. Yeah, with having family over there, it's in New York. It's not that far away. So,
But no, we're always like a train ride away. Truly, if you want to come over, John, just
I'm getting more interested. Oh, I certainly will.
So anytime. And this has really been an enjoyable experience. I really appreciate that. And you were very patient with my schedule, and I really, really appreciate that. I don't worry about that. I mean, on first pass, so this is great. Thank you very much.
We knew you'd be a great guest, so sweet.
I knew you guys would be great podcasters, all right, and great hosts as well from the podcast that I've listened to.
Well, as John says, we're the number one alternative history podcast, unless you can prove different.
Yeah, prove us wrong. Yeah.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah.
Right. So, anytime you want to have me back, you want to talk about the special relationship or about
100%.
Oh, Joe, I'm just going to cut the recording off, and then we can have 2 seconds before you go. So thanks everybody for listening. We'll be back soon. Bye for now.
Bye.
Bye.
And that's it. We hope you've enjoyed today's episode. But after listening to us natter on, why not let us know what you think? Find us on Blue Sky by searching for Chats in Time. On Facebook, search ORC Time. And on X, we are ORC_time. Until next time, cheerio!